Week 13 of the NFL season has arrived. Let's talk about some of these featured games that so many will be watching on Sky TV. Why don't we start in Atlanta, where the Falcons will host the Minnesota Vikings. Falcons a 3-point favorite at Betsafe, 46.5 the total in this one. Now the Vikings have won 7 straight games. They're now 9-2 on the season. But the Falcons have been playing pretty well themselves. They've won 3 in a row. They're now 7-4, so this a big game in the NFC. And to me, it's a big test for the Minnesota Vikings. A big test to see whether they, with Case Keenum as their quarterback, with an offense that is somewhat conservative, certainly not explosive, whether they can go on the road and beat a team like Atlanta with an elite quarterback and an offense that is genuinely explosive. And look, I know a couple of weeks ago, or a few weeks ago, there was a lot of talk about how Atlanta's offense was a little bit disappointing this season, but you have not heard that talk lately. Seems like Steve Sarkisian has finally figured it out. You look at the last 3 games, the Falcons scored 27 against Dallas, 34 against Seattle, and 34 again against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Starting to get Julio Jones more involved in the passing attack, still running the ball well. And look, a home game here, and I know Minnesota has a great defense, but I'd be surprised if the Falcons aren't able to put up at least 24 to 27 points in this situation and put some pressure on Case Keenum and this Minnesota offense. And look, statistically, the Vikings have been pretty good this season offensively, but if you've seen them play, you know what I'm talking about. Yes, Keenum is efficient, but more of a check down Charlie type. They don't really challenge defenses downfield that much. And Atlanta's defense, to me, this could be the story of the game. Atlanta's defense, don't sleep on the Falcons' defense. I know for the past few years, it's been viewed as a weakness of this Atlanta team, but this season, it is a top 10 unit, and they've held 4 of their last 5 opponents to 20 points or fewer. And to me, that's going to be the difference in this game. Everybody talks about the Minnesota defense, but Atlanta's defense pretty good in its own right, and I do believe the Falcons are better offensively than the Vikings. Playing at home in this situation, I think Atlanta a good bet to pick up the win and cover the 3-point number. Moving on now to New Orleans, maybe the game of the week. The Carolina Panthers coming to town to face the Saints. Both these teams 8-3, tied atop the NFC South. Carolina has won 4 straight games. The Saints, meanwhile, coming off a tough loss to the LA Rams. But New Orleans returning home here to the Superdome where they have been so good. I mean, you look at their last 27 home games against teams with winning records. The Saints 22-5 against the spread in those 27 games. So look, when New Orleans gets a good team at home, they nearly always win and cover. And it's impossible to talk about the Saints without starting with their offense. So good. Second in the NFL in total offense this season. And there's been a lot of talk about how it's turned to a run-first offense, how the Saints are now a run-first offense. And they have been running the ball really well. 3rd in the NFL in rush yards per game. But they're 2nd in the league in pass yards per game. Drew Brees still getting it done even at his age. So just no weakness to this New Orleans offense. And while Carolina is very good defensively, top 5 when you look at the stats, they're not dominant on that side of the ball. Last week, they allowed 27 points and 391 total yards to the New York Jets. So look, going on the road, facing the Saints here, the Panthers are going to allow some yards and points. Everybody does when you're facing this New Orleans offense. To me, the question of this game is going to be whether the New Orleans defense can slow down the Carolina rushing attack. We know the Panthers like to run the football, just 24th in the NFL in passing offense, but 5th in rush yards per game. And the Saints defense, while they've been pretty good over these last few weeks, they do allow a generous 4.6 yards per rush. So look, if Carolina is able to just run the ball right at this Saints defense and keep Drew Brees and that offense off the field, then the Panthers might be able to pull off the upset here. But if the Saints are able to contain that Carolina offense, which does fall asleep at times, keep in mind this Carolina offense has had some ugly performances this season, and if the Saints are able to contain them, they might win this game big. Look, last week they faced Todd Gurley, probably the NFL's best running back right now, and they held him in check, 74 yards on 17 carries. I just have a hard time betting against New Orleans in this situation. I recognize the possibility that Carolina could come out there and really push them around, run the ball right at them, and control the time possession and sort of control this game. I just don't think that's going to be the way it goes down. This Saints defense has exceeded expectations really every step of the way for the past 10 or 11 weeks or so, ever since those first 2 games of the season where they really weren't good. Ever since then, they've been better than expected. So wouldn't surprise me to see the Saints defense come out and exceed expectations once again here. And I have full faith in the New Orleans offense, especially when they're at home. Again, they can beat you so many different ways, running the ball really well this year with Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara, and of course Drew Brees doing what he does. The Carolina defense better against the run than they are against the pass, so Brees could have some opportunities in this one. I think the Saints better than the Panthers. I like them to win this game at home and cover the 4-point number. Moving on now to Sunday night in Seattle, where the Seahawks will host the Philadelphia Eagles. Eagles a 6.5-point favorite at Betsafe, 47.5 the total in this one. Philly has just been tearing through the league, 10-1 now. Nobody can slow down Carson Wentz and this Philadelphia offense. They're averaging 31.9 points per game. That is best in the NFL. And the Eagles pretty good on defense as well, especially up front. Number 1 in the NFL in rushing defense, surrendering just 65.1 rushing yards per game. You look at Seattle, meanwhile, a team that's known for its defense. They haven't been very good on that side of the ball. Now, injuries have played a big part. No Richard Sherman, no Cam Chancellor, so the Legion of Boom is effectively no more. And whenever the Seahawks have faced an elite offense, they have been exposed. They surrendered 34 points to Atlanta 2 weeks ago, 38 to Houston 5 games ago. That's when the Texans were still starting Deshaun Watson at quarterback. So I have little faith in them in this situation against this Philadelphia offense that, again, is averaging nearly 32 points per game. But Seattle should be able to find some success on the other side of the ball. Russell Wilson playing the best football of his career. He is 3rd in the NFL in passing yards. And as good as the Philadelphia defense is up front, they are vulnerable in the secondary. 16th against the pass right now when you look at the stats. But really, they've been padding those stats against some bad passing offenses here over the past month. You look at the last 4 opponents the Eagles have faced: Chicago, Dallas, Denver, and San Francisco. None of those teams going to scare you with their passing attack. Different story here with Russell Wilson and this Seattle offense. So I'm expecting a high-scoring back-and-forth game here. I do think the Eagles are going to win the game, but I'm a little hesitant about giving Seattle 6.5 points at home. I think the better play here is the over. 47.5 is the total. As we said, the Eagles averaging nearly 32 points themselves, and I do feel like Russell Wilson and that Seahawks offense going to have some success in this matchup. So over 47.5, my recommendation in this one. Final game I'd like to talk about in this Week 13, what about the Monday Nighter? The Pittsburgh Steelers going on the road to face their division rival Cincinnati. Steelers a 5.5-point favorite at Betsafe, 44.5 the total in this one. Steelers have already beaten the Bengals this year, 29-14. That was back in Week 6. Pittsburgh now 9-2 on the season, in firm control of the AFC North. Cincinnati, meanwhile, 5-6, fighting for their playoff lives. The Bengals' main issue this season has been their offense. Last in the NFL in total yards per game, the Bengals producing just 274.3 yards per game and just 18.1 points per game. Pittsburgh, meanwhile, very good on the defensive side of the ball, 4th in the NFL in both total defense and points allowed. So you wonder how the Bengals are going to generate offense in this one. But Cincinnati is pretty good on the defensive side of the ball, 5th in the NFL in passing defense, and they've only surrendered more than 24 points 2 times this season. One of those times was to this Pittsburgh team. They gave up 29, again, as we said, in Week 6. The other time, they gave up 27 to the Green Bay Packers back when Aaron Rodgers was playing quarterback for the Packers. So aside from that, this Cincinnati defense has been pretty tough to score on this season. And look, I know Pittsburgh has been playing well offensively these past couple of weeks, but they've had trouble against this Cincinnati defense in the past. Certainly, the Bengals know how to defend Ben Roethlisberger and this Pittsburgh attack. You look at the total here, 44.5. Boy, not many Cincinnati games go over that total. As a matter of fact, 8 of the 11 games the Bengals have played this season have ended up under 44.5. And you look at a game like this, division rivals, Cincinnati really needs the game. We mentioned they know how to defend Ben Roethlisberger and this Pittsburgh attack. And even though the Steelers have put up some points here these past couple of weeks, they've been very inconsistent on offense this season. So wouldn't surprise me if we saw a low-scoring, sort of ugly game here. I think 44.5, a bit high for this situation. I like the under in this one. There you have it, folks. Those are my thoughts for Week 13 of this NFL season. I wish you best of luck no matter what you decide to do this week, just so long as your interests don't conflict with my interests. For Betsafe, I'm John Arnette.